Hey guys, how's everybody doing? Let everybody pop in real quick. It is Tuesday afternoon, 2 o'clock. We promised you a live stream. So I'm going to make good on that promise. My name's Derek. And with Intune Music, I'm in the Odessa location. I can see Kyler has joined us. Mr. Chavez is the Midland store manager. I can see our good friend Cody Gaines is here. Our friend Rick. And there's Steven Silva. So good to have everybody. How's everybody doing today?
Wonderful.
Everybody else good? Cody, you're going to find out these other guys are fairly shy. It's okay.
Well, you and I can do all the talking then.
That's right. So this is our, I don't even know how many installments it is. We've been talking about making music at home. Again, a conversation started by Steven and I a long time ago. And we've just kind of seen this conversation grow as we've gone along. One of the fun things that we've done along the way, and it kind of interrupted some of the technical stuff that we were doing, is and I don't know if you got to see him, Cody, or not, but we actually had the stores create a home recording, and then they put video on top of it. And then we threw it out there and let people vote on it to see which one they liked the best. So that was fun. And everybody voted for Abilene. They did Superstition. Again, I don't know if you saw any of those. It was a lot of fun. I was really proud of everybody. They took 1 week and just did what they could do with it. And I was just kind of excited. And, you know, I don't want to sound too, but I was really proud of them. They did a great job for having just a week to do it. So prior to that, Steven and I had both talked about the fact that we are GarageBand guys. That's what we have. That's where we started. I kind of think that that's an important point to make. And it's what we wanted to make when everybody, all the restrictions were even stricter than they are now. If you want to make music, make some music at home, because there weren't any venues for us to go play at. There wasn't anything for us to do. So Steven, I don't remember. Yeah, you've shown off. He did a whole session on one of his pieces that he did. It was a cool jazz thing. I showed last week. I got inspired. I think it was last week. I got inspired about and tried to do something at home. We listened to it and we did some critiques of our own. And the guys were very generous and very kind. You know, I was laughing at Cody. I was talking to Kyler afterwards, and I don't know if anybody's ever done this to you, Cody, but he's like, man, I respect the fact that you put that out there sounding like that. And you're like, what? He goes, no, it was cool. I'm really glad you did it. I mean, most people wouldn't have put that out there. And I finally just said, dude, what are you saying? What are you really saying? So true to form, I'm going to do it again. So I took the statements that these guys made, and I tried to, and just so you know, what I did before is when I was putting in instruments, I chose from the library of sounds that GarageBand offers. Okay, so I was playing an acoustic guitar, but I chose I guess you can see the screen now, over here on the left, I picked a guitar sound. And so when I played in, it already put those settings on top of the track that I recorded. And it bothered me that it did that. I didn't like it that way necessarily. And so Steven said, look, or actually it was Kyler said, just open up, when you're going to record an actual channel, just do it as a microphone. Just tell it it's a microphone, and it won't put anything on it. And I recorded my stuff on this particular project. And then I went back and added the stuff that I wanted to. I could twist it and tweak it the way I wanted to. So I don't think I recorded it loud enough. I've already listened to it once just to see what it's going to sound like. I'll be quiet and just see if you guys think it's better this way than it was last week. Cody's at a disadvantage, but this is something I did just a day or two ago. Making sure everything's turned on and not working. Awesome. What am I doing, guys? Talk to me.
What did you turn off a while ago? You turned off something because of the reverb. Did you turn anything else off?
And the mic's still coming through the channel that I had it on. Oh, well, it's probably better off that way. But I will tell you that the experience that I had doing it the way we're talking about now, adding the effects afterwards, really made it a lot better for me. I mean, I was really tickled with the way that it turned out. So, oh well, let's skip this. I still encourage everybody, if GarageBand is what you have, that's what you need to do. And you need to be, you just own it and figure it out. Steven's still doing stuff that he dropped something down on SoundCloud the other day. And I thought, wow, that's really, really good. So, and I want to promote that again for you, Steven, if I can, your SoundCloud. If you want to give people, if you want people to go hear it. If you don't, I get it.
Yeah,
But
it's just SoundCloud at Steven Silva. That's Steven with a V, Silva. Got a couple of tracks up there. As I'm learning the process, I just decided to put stuff out. I mean, like, why wait? I'm seeing it as a musical journey, so I could look back maybe a couple of years from now and be like, yeah, I was doing that. Yeah, cool. Thanks, man.
Cool. So that's going on, and we decided that it's probably smart and it's time to talk about something beyond that. So, Rick, I want to make sure you are monitoring questions as they come in.
I am.
In the chat. Cool.
Yes.
Awesome. So don't be scared to interrupt us. Cody, I'm just going to kind of introduce you as best I can. You have a degree in sound engineering. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you have done live mix as a profession for what, 10 years now?
Yeah, going a decade. Yeah, actually right at a decade. Yeah.
It's kind of scary to say that sometimes, isn't it?
It is. I've been doing this. So I went to school in 2004. So I guess 16 years I've been in audio now.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And I know some things. You've actually won some national contests for your work mixing stuff back down and taking raw tracks and turning it into the finished project. So I'm excited to have you with us today. I hope that you're excited to be with us. I'm going to ask some questions to kind of get things rolling. And then I'm going to ask you to demonstrate some things, if that's cool.
Yeah.
So if y'all have questions for Cody, don't be shy. You have to jump in. And Rick, if we get questions in the chat, please say so. So here's the thing. I don't care if we're talking about GarageBand. I don't care if we're talking about Logic or any of the others, the Presonus programs, any program. Steve and I started this conversation yesterday in my office. I think it's kind of important before you know if it's a good mix to actually know what you want it to sound like. And we've never really talked about that before. I think I've heard the term thrown out there before, a sonic signature, or what is the sound. For instance, if you're doing live mixing at a church, they have a sound that they want it to sound like. Agree?
Yeah.
Or even if you're recording, you have to know, instead of just tweaking knobs and bumping stuff, at some point you have to go, okay, I want the bass to sound like this. I want the snare to sound like this. I want the tone to sound like this overall, the vocals to be this deep or present. Agreed?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, matter of fact, in like studio situations, I mean, that's why you have those like rehearsal periods before you actually start like making a record. That way you can kind of talk that out amongst one another, especially if you live in Timbuktu and you fly into LA to do like a record and you have to all get on the same page,
Well, that's interesting though. In your experience or in your estimation or opinion, do you think that sonic sound comes from the engineer, or is it the engineer's job to go, hey guys, what do you want this to sound like?
Yeah, I think it's the producer. Yeah. So the band's going to hire a producer to help develop their sound. And then they relay that to the engineer. And then he says, okay, well, I got an idea to maybe get that sound out, and then use his knowledge and experience to help, formulate that idea to something usable.
Sure. So if we're making music at home and we don't have a producer and we don't have the opportunity to, basically we're just going to listen to music that we have, figure out what we like and why, and then emulate it. I mean, you actually kind of have to flesh some of that out.
Right. Yeah.
I don't think we talked about that before. And, if we have band director friends or orchestra teachers that are listening to what we're doing right now, you have to have an idea of what a great band or orchestra sounds like. If you are, going to record your group, if you like a certain country artist and you're a country act, then you figure out what it is you like about it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right.
And would you agree with this too? There's probably some stuff on the radio or on the radio. I'm not dissing anybody on satellite or on, all the streaming services. There's some crap out there. I
Yeah.
mean, there's some stuff you listen to and go, that's really not good. And I don't mean, and that's sad to me. And that's kind of why you have to find a good relationship with a producer or an engineer.
Right.
And take your, that's your talent, that's your creation, and not make it sound bad. So I just wanted to roll through that real quick. If you agreed with that, it's just listening. Is that the only way to do that?
Yeah, honestly, I mean, even from like a mix perspective, if somebody hands you a song and says, "Hey, this is the style we're going after," I always ask people, what are you listening to right now? What's your favorite band? And then you could go to those albums and listen to them and see how they sound and see if you can't replicate it. We call them reference mixes. You have reference mixes to guide you towards something,
And so I've mixed stuff before. I'm like, I think I need some more bass in this. Great. I'm always going to say that. I need some more bass here. But then now I've lost such and such, and I just keep bumping everything up. And pretty soon you just got everything's maxed out and it still sounds bad.
Mhm.
Is there a point where you just walk away and you go listen to your reference mix again and you come back and go, okay?
Yeah, I think so for sure. Yeah. Especially if you just keep pushing everything up, you're kind of, doing yourself any favors. Just start over maybe.
You know what I'm saying though, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh yeah.
There's times you're like, well, I need to hear that, but now I can't hear that. And where does that go?
It's funny that you say that, because even in my experience, when I'm at that point and I'm kind of frustrated with it, I said, screw it. And every track, I'm just dropping it back to nothing. And then I start with like what I want to hear first. And then I just slowly ease everything up that way. And I found a better result.
Cool.
Yeah. I make revisions on mixes too. When I load a song, which I'll show you here in a second how I load a song. I'll have a foundation, I'll title it, and then after I make some pretty major moves, I'll retitle it as another session as like _A. And so I always have a way to step back. If I've completely screwed something up, I can say, I'm going to go back to this revision, start here again, and that way I have a stepping stone. I think I made it to revisions like F before, like just doing changes and having something to go back to,
That seems like a pretty smart way to do it. I don't know if anybody ever thinks that way.
Well, I'm going to ask you this too. Come back to me, Brain. It's good to think ahead because you're talking about how many revisions you make. And listen, this is ignorance. I don't mind showing it off. How large are these sound files we're dealing with, like in Logic or, even in GarageBand? Should we consider ahead of time external hard drives and stuff that we need to store stuff on? Are they that big?
Yeah, I mean, you can get up to most of them. I mean, most general sessions are probably under a gig, but there's some big, depending on how big or how good the quality is, depends on how big the file is. But the actual like Logic session is just like kilobytes, because it's all it's doing is grabbing from those files and organizing into a little project.
Right.
And so
it's not really storing in Logic.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
But I always mix and record to the internal drive just because it's faster. And then once I know the project, obviously get it off the internal, put it on a storage somewhere else.
Let me ask you this: are you one of those guys that saves the whole project, or do you just save a finished product?
Oh no, the whole thing. Yeah.
Forever.
Well, yeah. I mean, if I was a professional, like at a studio somewhere, I would have to save that file, because you may get a call one day and say, "Hey, this song's going on Guitar Hero for the Nintendo. We need just the guitar tracks." Okay, well, cool. Let me print them out. Here they are.
Okay.
So
that makes sense. And I'm that guy anyway. I'm a hoarder
right.
of that kind of information. So awesome. Well, do you guys have any other questions? By the way, did you listen to any of those things? If you did,
yeah, I'll talk through some. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You got any just overall general comments you would make to our guys? I know they want to hear it.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the biggest thing is for a mix engineer, the biggest thing you can do is just find a balance for everything. And so my goal is I want to hear everything, but I don't want anything poking out that's distracting, And so that's the biggest critique for all of those is you can there's some points where you hear things kind of sticking out, like whether it be a hi-hat or a cowbell or something, like, oh, that's really loud,
Right.
Yeah.
Does
Well-
a cowbell ever really sit good in a mix though?
You can bury it and you can still hear that thing.
Well, I'm gonna throw a few questions at you if you don't care. If you did listen to him,
Yeah, I did.
this is the guy. This is Kevin. Kevin did the Alito, and speaking of cowbell, he did that mix.
Okay.
And one of the things he said was, how do you approach using ambient effects like reverb and delay without muddying up the mix?
Cut out the low end. Yeah.
That's the answer. Take
Yeah,
some
I
low.
mean, seriously, I mean, like, especially like say you put a reverb on a snare drum. I don't want to hear the low end content of the snare and the reverb. I mean, when I'm using it for reverb for the snare, I'm just trying to get the tail to extend that hit, you know.
Right.
So I don't want to hear all that body in there anyway. So I usually just high pass that reverb, you know.
Okay. Somebody else say something?
Sorry, I was taking some notes.
All right. And then he also said, how do you approach controlling the low end? Speaking of, with modern worship music tending to be bass heavy, and he said that's probably a good question for live and or recording mixers.
Yeah. I guess there's several answers to that. But compression is your main goal. I mean, with the bass, like a bass guitar, I mean, just compress. If it's getting out of hand, compress it. I mean, it's going to squish that low end down.
How do you know? How do you know when you got too much compression? Is that a bad thing?
Never. Just stomp on it, man. It doesn't matter. Now, modern music relies heavily on compression. I mean, it really does. I mean, it's just the way it is. Which goes back to what you were talking about before, your mixed philosophy or whatever. It all kinds of plays into style too. And so modern music is very kick snare heavy, very kind of compressed. Even though there are some mixes now, like as we speak, kind of dialing back the compression and making it more dynamic. So yeah, compression's kind of, and I don't think anybody's afraid of it, you know.
And here's one last question he had, and it kind of plays into what we've been doing, and it kind of doesn't. He said it's the difference between a live and or a studio recording.
Mm-hmm.
His question is, what are some things you would do different in a studio setting than you would in a live setting, as far as just setting it up generally, I guess?
Well, cool thing is that line's getting blurred. I mean, with the advent of digital consoles, they're getting really, really fast. And so, for instance, at our church, I actually run outboard effects over a protocol called MADI. MADI is just an optical fiber, and so it's really fast. I could send the guitar out to a plugin like I would use in Logic, affect it, and bring it back in like less than 10 milliseconds. And even 10 milliseconds is kind of long when you start talking about that, you know. But
I'm just gonna sit here and nod.
okay.
Excellent.
So yeah. And so there's actually, so before we got our new system at our church, you know, I couldn't do a whole lot of those things, but with that new digital console, I mean, I'm running subgroups just like I do in Logic, which just means I'll send all my drum channels to a stereo group. I could process that group. And so matter of fact, that's how I'm mixing everything. I send drums to a group, guitars to a group, vocals to a group. I compress those individually. And so I'm really just bringing up the whole volume, and it sounds more like a record would, you know.
And is that the same way you would do it in a recording session if you have the big enough board and stuff to do?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Can you do that in Logic without a board? Can you sub and?
Oh yeah. That was the only way to do beforehand, before we got all the fancy stuff up at the church, you know.
Okay.
You didn't have that opportunity, you know, that option. It was just like bring in the channels and spin it back out to the PA, you know.
Okay. Well, I enjoyed the Alito guys because they didn't have any vocals.
Yeah.
I thought they made the trombone sound great. I thought they did a good job with the guitars. I'm gonna have to ask Kevin. I still haven't asked, did Chris actually play the bass? Sounded pretty good. So the Abilene store, they did Superstition. They had a lot of different instruments, and you're gonna have to forgive me. I don't remember what. Do you remember what he used, Kyler? Did he tell us?
I think Abilene used Logic as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So the guy that mixed there, his name's Kalen, and you basically answered his questions. What can we do better? You basically said make sure that you can hear everything and not one thing sticking out, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
That's your overall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I think on that song, seems like when he would slap the bass, that those high notes would kind of ping out of the mix a little bit. Yeah.
Okay. And then Andrew in our Odessa store is the one that mixed a song was called Blinding Lights. He did it actually in Reaper, and I didn't know Reaper worked that way.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that Stonegate uses that for
Playback. Yeah.
playback, but one question he asked was, how do you approach gain versus volume on an individual track? And does it differ from instrument to instrument?
Yeah. I mean, it will. If here's the thing, if you're kind of new at this, I would record on the light side, like the volume side. I mean, don't overdo it, because it's going to give you a lot of grace,
So let's back up real quick. When we're talking the difference between gain and volume, if we're talking signal flow, this is the way my brain thinks about it. You plug it in the board.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing it hits is your gain.
Right.
Correct.
Right.
And basically gain is how much signal are you letting into the mix. Agreed?
Well, it's actually a preamp. So because a microphone as is, like not even plugged up, it's still working. It's still, the diaphragm's still moving. It's still creating something. It's just not at a usable level. And so the whole purpose of gain is to take that signal and make it a usable level. So that's what the gain's doing. Is taking that. Oh, okay, now I can actually hear it. And
so
then
do you peak your gain?
I get pretty close. I mean, I've been doing it for long enough. I want it pretty hot.
You want as much signal as you have.
Yeah, just to use. Especially if you're going through like actual like analog gear, the more you turn those things up, the cooler they sound. If you're at home making music on just like a simple digital, interface, those are pretty clean sounding. The more you turn them up, they're not going to sound much different. So that's what I say, just err on the softer side, and you could boost it in the mix.
Okay.
That way
So when he says that versus volume, what is volume?
It's probably think about like the fader. So you boost the gain and you kind of push your fader up.
Which is after you've affected it with your EQ and whatever.
All that
pan,
stuff.
all that.
You got your gain set, yeah.
And is that how you actually set the mix for the recording?
Mm-hmm. I've actually changed the way I've kind of mixed the past few years. There's a way of mixing called unity mixing, where you leave your faders at unity and you.
That's what I do when I play in
shoot
here.
for gain. I've kind of switched to that a little bit. I don't know why. I just have. But that's what he's talking about, fader. But here's the thing you got to think about a fader. It's not actually a volume. It's actually just a send to the master. You're taking that gain. This is my signal. So when it's set to unity, it's literally a straight shot through that channel. It's exactly as it is coming off the preamp. When that fader's below 0, you're actually attenuating how much is actually passing through. So it's really just a send out to the master, which we call volume.
Okay,
So
his
if you-
next. Go ahead. I'm sorry,
Well,
caller.
I was gonna say, I mean, for anybody that's mixing, if you have your fader at 0
Mm-hmm.
and you're getting, say, distortion or clipping, however you want to. I mean, I
Mhm.
guess both of those terms are correct in recording. That just means that they just need to bring the gain down. That the fader is not actually gonna
Right.
help them in that scenario.
It's going to be clipped, whether it's soft
Yeah.
clipping or loud
Yeah.
clipping.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Cool. And this question, I don't know. You tell me how this fits in. What dB do you shoot for on a master track?
That is a long debate. Everybody has their own opinion.
Okay.
Here's my simple answer: -14. Like if
Bingo.
I was a guy like making a record and I'm going to send it to a mastering engineer, I'm going to shoot for -14. You can just read articles and articles and articles about this stuff, which goes back to what I was saying. Think people are making things more dynamic because Spotify and iTunes are different volumes. I think Spotify is -14, and I think iTunes is like -11 or something weird. And so no matter how loud you send a mix to them, they're going to turn it up or down to fit their range. So that's why even those lines are kind of getting blurred about how loud to do it.
Well, that may answer his next question. His next question was, and again, these aren't really relative to his mix, I don't think, but why do songs on the radio seem more compressed than on an album or on a CD or an MP3?
Yeah. And if you're talking about straight up radio, like over the air, they have a certain bandwidth they're trying to fit it in. And so they have to squeeze that file basically down to fit that bandwidth, especially on digital radio. And so that's why they're compressing it. I mean, they're literally compressing it just to get that size smaller so they can send it over the airwaves.
And Stephen and I will get lost on this. We talk about this a lot. One question that I'm going to throw at you based on that is, I'm thinking about modern technology and techniques versus, I'm old enough that when I was a kid, we had like a portable cassette deck sitting by the radio waiting for our favorite song to come on so we could capture it, and that lovely high quality sound. So just so we'd have it to listen to. But I started thinking about, we used to have a stereo at our house, or a turntable that was as big as a desk. And it sounded pretty good when you're sitting in front of it. Or if I put my big old can headphones on, I actually enjoyed it. And I don't know how vintage that is or how bad it actually was, but do you find, by and large, is there some of that recording from, 40 years ago that stood the test of time, that it's still like you're going, man, that's just a really good recording? Even if it's on vinyl, or even if, a lot of people are romantic about vinyl. I'm not trying to I'm actually asking technically. I don't think cassette sounds good ever, but some of the old recordings, can you say, God, that was just a really good recording?
Oh yeah, I do it all the time.
Hold up today.
Oh, all the time. Yeah. Especially when I listen to classic radio, something will come on. I'm like, man, that sounds really good.
So if you record right, it becomes kind of timeless.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think one of the questions that you gave me ahead of time was getting it right at the source. Does that really matter? Absolutely. 100%. Like, you should be moving that microphone around and getting it right. So where if you were to send it to a mixing engineer, he would have a hard time mixing it, because it's just going to be right. I read about guys, back in England, back in the 60s, like the guys doing the Beatles records, they would do like 3 albums a week, because they were just, they weren't really mixing it. They were mixing it as they went along. They got it all right, and literally pressed it on vinyl the next door, which is crazy.
One more question I'm going to ask you relative to that, and then I'm going to shut up, see if these other guys have a question, and this is a legit question based on the recordings. I know I had this question listening to our actual recordings. Drum mic placement, recording. What are we looking at? What's best practice, or is it just simply opinion again?
Actually, can I interrupt that real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Before you do the placement, what do you recommend for the actual mics themselves? And how does that?
Are you talking about what instruments is he miking? Which drums is he miking? Or are you asking for brand preference?
I guess all of the above.
Drums are probably the most complicated thing you'll record, because you're trying to get up to 12 different pieces to sound like one whole piece. But for me, Audix makes a great drum kit. Although I do skew their microphones. They have a model, it's called a D2, that's for like the high toms, and like their D4 is like the floor tom. I use the D4s on the high toms and the D6s on the floor toms. I mean, I'm really skewing them around just because I think they sound better. And then put a mic on the inside, like a Beta 91, and then something on the outside, some kind of sub mic.
On the kicks.
Yeah. And then snare, man, a SN57, I mean, you can't go wrong with that thing.
Do you split the snare and the hi-hat, or do you prefer one on each?
Yeah, one on each, essentially. Yeah. Something on hi-hat, 2 on the snare, bottom and top. I do see a lot of guys with their toms. It's like they'll point their mics like right at the rim, and I don't understand why they do that. Pointing out towards where the stick hits, like towards the middle of the head. I usually put a few inches, of air. Maybe I stick my fist in there. That's about how high I stick it. But if you take your ear and you hit that drum and you listen around that bead, it's really resonant. And so that microphone's like an ear. I mean, you're really pointing an ear at it. So if you're really wondering how something sounds, take your ear and start literally listening to it, and you can hear it. Or if it's an instrument you never recorded, just listen to it. Like pretend your ear is the microphone, and when you find a good spot, that's where that mic goes.
So if they shoot at the rim, they're going to get a lot of ring.
Oh yeah, it's all like resonant ring. Yeah, I've never.
Okay, but here's the tricky one: overheads.
What's that?
How high are you putting them above the cymbals?
Okay.
And how do you keep from them dominating everything you do? I mean, can you?
Here's the thing: the higher you go, the more of the kit you're going to get. I mean, the snare, the tom. I mean, you've got your high, your everything up here. Everything's going to be a little more balanced and kind of coming at you. If you get them a little closer to the cymbals, you're going to get more cymbal
sound.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
You can actually use your gain.
Yeah, absolutely. But I do get pretty nerdy about it. I'll take a string, and I'll take one end of the string and put it in the center of the snare, and I'll take it to one of the overheads, and I make sure they line up. and so they're all the same distance between.
So it's not dominant in one or the other.
Well, yeah, it's phase coherent. I mean, essentially.
There you go.
Yeah,
I knew there'd be a term.
yeah, yeah. They're so the sound of the snare is essentially hitting both of those mics at the same time.
Well, that's cool.
As far as an overall sound. Now, obviously, one it's going to be a little like crash heavy on one side, ride heavy on the other side, but that's kind of what you want. But
right, but that's the stereo of your ears. That's the way you'd hear it.
yeah,
Cool.
I'm like the worst cymbal guy anywhere. I don't mix loud cymbals because they're kind of obnoxious.
I think that's something we can all appreciate.
Okay, good. Except for the hi-hat. I have found a new love for the hi-hat. I don't know why. There's something about a cool like sticking hi-hat,
Yeah, I'm gonna poke a little bit. I know at Stonegate recently they had a circumstance where they couldn't use their drum enclosure. They had to basically just shield everything. And man, I'd never heard so much about cymbals in my life.
You get that shield, right?
So I'm kind of glad the bass player had in-ears for that.
Yeah.
But anyway, I kind of want to move forward with this. Thank you for answering questions. And if we got more, we doing okay there, Rick?
Yeah, we do have one question. Mr. Johns has asked, why not normalize to 0 dB? That's what he does with all of his recordings.
At the end? Yeah, I'm assuming like when he bounces or prints his mix.
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah, that's the ongoing discussion. I mean, just Google it, and you're going to get threads upon threads of people's opinions on it. And so for me personally, I'm still normalizing to 0 because I'm usually just doing a mix for me, and so I'm just going to listen to it in my car. So I'm not adhering to any standard, So what I was saying earlier about people are making more dynamic mixes. Let's say Spotify's at -14. Well, if I send them a -20 song that's kind of got a lot of dynamics in it, they're going to turn it up to -14, so that whole normalizing to 0 thing just didn't really.
You almost need to mix for yourself and then let them do whatever they're going to do.
Yeah, I mean, almost, since everybody has an opinion and each platform is doing something else,
Well, that's the other conversation and I'm trying so hard to move forward, but Steve and I were talking about the fact that and I think you'll agree with this, you need to listen to your recording
right
on as many different sources as you can.
Right.
Because you'll hear something on one source that you go, what's that?
Right.
First time I've heard that.
Absolutely.
But when do you decide, oh, well, that's just the way it's going to sound there?
I think after you listen to it on multiple sources, you'll find a balance of where it needs to be. It'll just kind of come to you like, okay, you know what, that's poking out there, but this is poking out here. Once everything starts having these little nitpicky things, there you are, you've arrived, Right. And if you listen to the majority of your music in your car, I mean, that should be your foundation anyway. Go listen to your reference mix. Okay, cool. Here's how the kick and the snare sound in my car. That's how I'm gonna make it sound in my mix.
So I need to add muffler noise to everything.
Road
everything I do.
Yeah.
Where's the bottom end? I don't know. All I hear is my muffler. Okay. Well, let's do this, guys. Do you have any other thing that you want to throw in that conversation?
I had one question for him. I think I sent this to him. I think a lot of people now are recording remotely, especially because of the COVID thing. Are there any, tips, I guess, or advice you can give to people that are doing it remotely to try to get the feel as if a band is playing together?
Yeah, like it sounds like they're in the same room or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
I get it. You mean like we're seeing all these Brady Bunch things that people are mixing together at the end?
Yeah.
Right.
If you wanted to lightly add a reverb, especially something called a convolution reverb. Convolution reverb is an image of a real space. And so, like for instance, Kylie, you play the Kemper. Well, somebody took a real amp and cloned it basically digitally, right? Well, they can do that with real spaces. You can go to just, like Ryman Hall, for instance, and send pulses through it, and you could create a reverb that sounds like Ryman Hall, And so, putting it in a real space like that, just lightly, will make it sound like it's all in the same room. I wouldn't overdo it by any means, just enough to kind of maybe hear a little ambience to it,
Now, for us newbies that maybe all we have is reverb settings that say small hall or large hall, or is there one of those that we would gravitate to, a small room, or?
Yeah, I would do a smaller room because if you can put large hall, man, that's not believable at all. I would try to pick something that's a little more believable for sure. But cool thing with Logic is they've got a convolution reverb inside Logic. So
It's built in.
Yep. Yeah.
So I think this might lead us to the next part of the conversation. I think Derek has mentioned this. If you're someone that's using GarageBand, why get Logic?
Right.
If you already have GarageBand, what's the difference, or why would you do it?
And at this point, why don't you go ahead and capture the screen, Cody, and show us what Logic looks like and
sure.
talk us through it.
Okay. I'm gonna move over here.
Oh,
Real
look
quick.
at those cute kids.
That's Logic. It comes included. So. No, so here's Logic. Here's what the icon looks like. I'll just open
Like a CD almost.
Yep. And so there we go. I think so, Kyla. As you kind of grow as a musician, engineer, whatever, I think you're going to find that there's some limitations to what GarageBand can do. So I actually started off in Logic. And I tried to use GarageBand once, and I abandoned it within about 5 minutes. I was like, I don't even know how it works. And so,
well, let me ask you this, Cody: is there different levels of Logic? I mean,
no,
you have Logic Pro X. That's what you just opened.
Yeah, that's it. This is Logic. I mean, this is everything. So,
and I don't mind saying this right now. I think it's like $200.
Yeah, it's really, as far as software goes, it's cheap. I mean, $200 gets you a lifetime, free updates, everything else.
I also think one of our friends, and we miss you, Mr. Hollowell. It's good to see some of your comments lately. I think he said right now, and if you'll type it in, if you're paying attention, Tyler, I think there's like a 90-day free trial going on from Apple, maybe. Tell us, Tyler. Go ahead, Kyler. I didn't mean to cut you off.
I think you're right. I think they're doing it for Logic and for what's the video Final Cut? Yeah, I think it's a trial that they're doing right now. So it's worth it to try out. I mean, that kind of like what Cody's saying. He tried out GarageBand and then he figured out he didn't like it. But
yeah,
which is weird because it's basically the big brother. Logic's the big brother, right?
Yeah, it's Logic feels more pro, and GarageBand feels a little more consumer. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, there are people making records on GarageBand, but it facilitates their needs,
Well, one of the reasons we jumped on that quick is because if you have an iOS device, you more than likely have GarageBand there already. So it's a way to get started.
Right. Yeah. And so, I mean, just this first icon or this first window here, I mean, it's a lot cleaner looking than GarageBand. GarageBand will load up with a bunch of stuff. And so Logic, you have to create at least one track before it'll even open. And then everything else is customizable. You have to tell it what you want. It does have tabs up here. So, I mean, I could kind of toggle on and off kind of some views you're used to in GarageBand. If I hover over something like that, give me a little help button. All this stuff, all these little buttons kind of open up drop down menus and whatever, and I could just get rid of them. This is kind of how I operate. I think I leave this one open. You've got these little settings down here. These are your kind of plugin settings. I think GarageBand has that. Correct me if I'm wrong. Does GarageBand have a mixer section?
No.
Steven, you'll have to answer, Steven.
Okay. I think that was my biggest qualm with it, is it didn't have this mixer section. I don't really like this view. I want my own mixer up here. So I always have two windows. I have my mixer window, and the other one's called the arrange window. So I'll get it up here. There's kind of it's kind of an old feature on the Mac. It's called hot corners. I don't know if anybody actually uses it, but I can take my mouse and I can move it to this corner, whatever, and it'll explode every window. Okay. And so that's how I literally toggle back and forth between my windows, is based off of where I want it to be. And I'll just snap to the corner and go, so it's pretty simple for me.
They have that feature now, but it's on your toolbar at the bottom next to your Finder and next to your launch pad. And I can't remember what it's called. It starts with
expose. That's what it is. There's that button. Yeah. That's how you assign it. So it's a lot more generic when you open it, for lack of a better word. You have to tell it what you want. So I'll just here, I kind of had this set up ahead of time. If I click on this is how I can import files. This is how I like to do it. I usually just hit all files. This is just a navigation tool. And so I have some files in my downloads folder. And so I'll just import all of these. I just click add. It'll ask me, it says, do you want to create new tracks or use existing tracks? Since there's no tracks, I'm just going to click that. And it'll spit all these tracks. It'll create new ones and spit them all out for me. And then it'll be ready to go. And so right there, I have a session ready. All the tracks in this song are there. They're all labeled, they're in order. If I go back to my mixer, I've got a new fader for everything. So I've got the fader, I've got the pan knob. You can load plugins in here. We can get that in a second. So you could do a lot more to it. I think it's a lot more functional. And so, like I say, as you grow as a mixer, you're going to want to really dial in your mix, your sound. And so this is how you get there, by doing all these things.
Okay, so you've loaded in a bunch of tracks.
Right.
They're now showing up in your arranger window, and you've got it automatically added a fader for them in your mixer window.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Pre-recorded stuff, right? This is
stuff. So I should probably give credit. I got these tracks off of a website. I think it's cambridge-mt.com. There is a magazine out there called Sound on Sound. Sound on Sound does just little mix reviews every month or every issue, and then they upload those multi-tracks to this website. And so you can download these multi-tracks for free. You just kind of have to give it credit. So the name of this band is Angels and Amplifiers. What is the name of this song? I'm All Right. There you go.
Let me ask you this. Is this a great way to practice and to hone and to,
Oh yeah.
If you don't have to go record everything like I did in GarageBand, I had to play everything in before I could mess with it at all.
Right. Yeah.
This way you get pre-recorded stuff,
right,
and all you're doing is the actual mixing part of it.
Right. Some of it's good, some of it's not good. That's why it's a editorial for this magazine. But this is what I did for years. I mean, so I always tell people I always played at the guitar. I never played the guitar, just played at it. Once I figured out I wasn't a very good guitar player, but I was pretty good at mixing. I was like, okay, well, this is how I should do it. And so a guitar player would spend, a couple hours a night playing guitar, right? That's how you got better. Well, this is what I did. I would just search the internet, clicking away for free tracks I could mix. And that's how I practice. And I would do this a couple nights a week for a few hours.
Does it have to be a certain format to work in Logic?
No
format.
So it'll load raw files, so WAV files, or what's called an AIFF file. As long as they're one of those, or even MP4s, as long as it's one file, it'll load it in. It does it automatically. It just sees it as an audio file, so it just puts it on a track. I mean, it could be a stereo MP3. If I pulled it in, it would put it on a track. Okay. So yeah. So you're loading raw audio files. Logic creates its own project setting that accesses those files. Yeah.
Okay. Everybody good so far? You guys got questions?
No, we're learning.
Yeah.
Well, I know, but
I feel like I'm just talking. So if I talk too much, just tell me to shut up.
No.
Well,
we want you.
One question I have, and I know Kyler's told me about it. What different type of preset sounds do you get in Logic that you may not get in GarageBand?
Like synth sounds and stuff like that.
Synth sounds,
the library,
drums. Yeah. Your library.
Yeah. So if I go up here to if I do a new drummer track, this is something I don't use very much because I'm using this mixing. I'm not creating music. Hang on a second. I might have done that wrong. Here we go. So it'll load.
See, that looks like GarageBand.
It does. It does a lot. This is kind of I don't like this view. Again, forgive me. I don't use this a whole lot. But it still has customizable stuff. There's actually another view I'm trying to find where it gives you it's an image of like the kit of this kit in this studio, and you can move the mics around it in like this studio. It'll kind of show you how you can manipulate that sound. I'm trying to find it. Anyways, we'll keep cruising, and I'll kind of see if I can't figure it out from here. But it's pretty cool. I mean, you could do everything in GarageBand plus more. Over here is let me get rid of this. This is a bunch of loops. This is kind of your loop menu, so you can kind of go through here and find. Here's a loop section. I'm an idiot. And just drag one of these on if I wanted to. Here's a loop here. Sorry. if I wanted to, and whatever this is, strings. Yeah, mine's not playing either.
Well, let me ask you this while you're doing that.
Yeah.
One of the weaknesses I have is that I don't have a MIDI controller. So if I'm trying to create music, I kind of have to play it off of a guitar. And I know that Stephen uses a MIDI controller, and he has a lot more control over what he actually enters.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you have to have that to actually access a lot of this stuff? I mean, is there a way to do it off of a computer keyboard?
Yeah, there is. Matter of fact, so this, whenever I loaded this loop, it loaded this right here. This is called a piano roll.
Right.
I could play those samples just by clicking these keyboards. And so you can literally come in here and write in different notes. You know, obviously it's a little more time consuming, but I think there are ways to set up your keyboard to make it happen. It's so funny. I don't hear audio now either. We must have done something when we went live.
Yeah.
Because I don't hear this either. Oh, there it is.
Okay.
There we go. Anyways, so Stephen, that was kind of a circle of an answer for you, but
Did he answer the question, Stephen?
Yeah, that's good.
Logic comes with like gigabytes of samples. So whenever you install it, it'll say, hey, do you want to download these sample libraries? You'll click yes, and it'll say, okay, cool, give us 6 hours. It's a ton of files. And so, yes, once you start really digging into it, I think you'll find there's a lot more to choose from, especially from, that file, there.
And see, like at least my experience with it, because I play a little bit of piano. So in my experience with it, I haven't done a lot of loop samples. I may have done some tracks where I'll get like a preset drums, and I kind of started that way. But then I got to a point, it's like, well, I want to experiment with individual drum sounds to create my own drum sound. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, sure. I think I just figured out what I was looking for. There we go.
Look at you talking and working on the fly. You're impressive.
Yeah, so I mean, so like as far as drums, you could pick different kits, and then you could tune it and dampen it and all this other good stuff. Actually, I think I have to put it in record mode.
That's pretty cool.
I think since I don't have an interface, it's not being audible because it has to be in record mode. But this is a really customizable drum kit. It's really cool. So the way you do that is actually you have to create up here. I went to create software instrument track. And then what it's doing is actually loading a plugin. This is basically a sample plugin. So they've got some synthesizers, horns, strings. You've got this old B3 here. I mean, you could load all kinds of these things,
Levers and everything.
All that good stuff. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So having a MIDI controller for something like this would probably be a lot more advantageous than, clicking away on the piano roll.
Got it.
Yeah. See, it's metering. I could see it metering down there, but I think it's a lack of interface.
Okay.
Cool. Thanks, man.
Yeah.
So we got the tracks in.
Yeah. So yeah, once you get your tracks loaded, I mean, you can start plugging away at it. I always, I'm a little more neurotic, so I always, color code my tracks, just because I like certain things a different color, and I have the same color for everything all the time.
So every mix you go back to, what you're messing with.
Absolutely, yeah. So I mean, like I said, you can color whatever you want. My drum tracks are always blue. My bass tracks are always orange. Anything keys are pink. Guitars are always green, and vocals.
Is there a subtle message going on there?
Well, yeah, kind of. It kind of worked out. I was doing. I would tell people, vocals are violet, guitars are green, pianos are pink. But then I was like, drums are, they're blue.
Yeah, they're blue.
So, that's the first thing I always use, color code it, so I always know what I'm doing.
And so show me again where you did that real quick, if you don't mind.
I use key commands.
No, where did you pull that from?
What, this?
The color wheel, where did that come from?
Yeah, Option C.
Okay.
I don't know where it is in the menu anymore.
It's up there somewhere though.
Yeah. Here's the thing, man. Learn your key commands. If you go to any one of these windows, see this right here, it says Command Z, undo.
Mm-hmm.
Here's all your key commands right here. Like, memorize all of this stuff. I mean, copy, paste is just Command C, Command V. The color thing was, I wonder if I can find it up here. Anyway, it'll tell you Option C, like this little arrow here. I think that's Option. So learning all these key commands, and even in Logic, if you come back to where is it? Key commands. I can actually search for stuff, you know. And
I think if they work the way that I'm used to, there is an option in. I think everybody's got a PDF manuals these days. You can download that, but typically they have, you know, when I used to get my Adobe products, they would have a card that I could reference with all the key commands on it till I learned them. And I'm sure that Logic will do the same thing if you just look for it.
Yeah. The more you use it, the more you learn.
And you figure out the ones you need. I mean,
right. Yeah, for sure. I actually get here. Let me open this other session because I get super nerdy with it. I'm almost afraid to show you.
that's all right. I let him hear me sing, right, Kyler?
Okay, cool. So this is probably the way I use some more advanced features in Logic. So they have stuff called actually, you know what? Let me go ahead and skip.
How your mixers even label with colors? Does it do that automatically?
No, you have to go back and do it to everyone. So once you color code it here, you have to go back to the mixer and color code it there. It doesn't follow. Sorry, wrong one. In Logic, I use something called track stacks. So let me just do all my drums. So all my drums are blue. So what I do, so this session, there's 2 kick files, right? So I actually, here, let me just do this real quick. I'll pull them out of the stack. So they'll come to me like this with 2 kick files. What I'll do is if I do Shift Command D, it'll give me an option to create a summing stack or a folder stack. So folder stack just slims them down to a folder, whereas a summing stack kind of makes them an aux. So now I can process both my kick drums together off of one little fader here.
So it's almost like a sub.
It is. It's a mini sub because what I do from here is I've got all these. So I've got all my cymbals in a stack. I've got my toms in a stack. I've got my snare and kicks in a stack, and then from there, all these drums. See, they all go out bus 1. Bus 1 is my drum. So I kind of mini sub into a sub, and then goes out to the master. And so what I do is I can compress things just a little bit all along the way, all along this, instead of having to like really slam compression and stuff. I feel like it gets a little more, it sounds a little better, and it sounds so squished, really.
You just saved me a ton of time, Cody.
Yeah, if you want to know the key command, text me. I'll send you the key command because it's really, really helpful.
See, everybody else thinks we were doing this for public. We're actually doing this for our own.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and so this is how I'm running front of house. I can't do these micro subs, but when I run front of house at the church, I'm taking all my drums and I'm sending them to, on the R console, it's called a group, and then I can compress this group as a whole. So all my drums as a whole, through.
Now it's getting scary. That's way too many.
Yeah, and so that's how I do it there, because it's the same theory. I could really dial in the sound instead of just being so open and dynamic. I have a lot more control over it. We're still maintaining some dynamics. I think music should breathe a little bit. Like, don't squish it.
Right. Okay. So you got
a question. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I noticed you have some plugins on there. Are all your plugins built into Logic, or do you use external plugins?
I buy all third-party plugins, but Logic has a ton. They really do. They've really upped their plugin game. So let me open up this here. If you go here, actually, I'm going to mixer view because I just like it better. So you can add just, gobs of plugins. So it gives me all these little rows here because I have so many added on my master right here. And yes, I do process my master just a little bit. Some guys will get mad at you for touching the master, but I don't care. So
they haven't written you a check yet, have they?
That's right. So I can add plugins here. All the built-in ones from Logic are in this row right here. Okay. So these are your recently used. So that's what I've used.
Okay. So let's stop just a second. You got people like me out there that we want to act like we know what a plugin means.
Plugin is a small piece of software that's going to process your track. Okay, so EQ.
Now, if you go looking for a plugin, does it have to say it's compatible with Logic?
Logic uses audio units, an audio units plugin. Okay, most plugin manufacturers, if you buy a third-party plugin, they give you everything. They give you.
They'd be silly not to, but I'm just
Right. It'll work with Pro Tools, Logic. Pro Tools uses AAX. This uses audio units, and this is just the way they code their software. It's just.
But why would I need a plugin if I have a great program like Logic? What does the plugin? What would make me go, gosh, I need a plugin?
Without this, you can't process it. So if you want to EQ your track, you have to load an EQ plugin. So
basically, you've got the framework in Logic.
Oh yeah.
You have to flesh it out with plugins to accomplish what you're wanting to do.
Absolutely, yeah. So that's just a generic Logic EQ. I mean, I could go down here to Dynamics and pull up a compressor. And so this is where they've really excelled with Logic X, because it used to be a real generic compressor. Now, excuse me, they've got different models. These are modeled after real pieces of hardware, like studio hardware, just based off these different buttons up here. So they all sound a little different. They all react a little differently, depending on which one you have. So you can kind of just by putting a compressor on something and changing one of these colors, it'll sound a little different, you know. So
Right.
it really does have a lot of cool options just built into Logic. You don't need the third party.
You know, kind of a funny side story. People that don't know, I spent some time in radio, and it was always funny. The guy I followed would like climb into the compressor settings on our studio mic, and he would put so much compression on it. I mean, when he wasn't talking, you could like hear the air conditioner clicking on at the other end of the building. And then I would get on it and just scare myself, and I'd have to switch it back where it went. But my point is, sometimes if you heard him on the radio and then you met him in person, you'd be like, where's your magic voice?
That's the whole point. Yeah.
You could do so much with compression as far as
as
squishing that stuff down. So anyway, I always thought that was funny.
Yeah, so Kyle, I mean, it's got a ton of stuff. If you bought Logic, you can go for days without even buying any plugins. You wouldn't need to get started. Even the where's the reverb right here? So this Space Designer, this is that convolution thing I was telling you about. So once this pulls up,
you know, that sounds like a Yosemite Sam cuss word, right?
Yeah. So I can come in down here to like large spaces, and it'll tell you even sometimes the room they've modeled. Yeah, maybe not Abby, whatever that means. Yeah. So this particular reverb is an actual space that they made a copy of, essentially. There are other reverbs on here which are called algorithmic. So basically, there's some guy, you know, behind a computer, like, you know, coding stuff and like making
a mathematician, right?
Yeah, he's doing the math for sure. Chroma verb, I don't know this one. It's been so long. Yeah, so this is more of an algorithmic thing, but this says room. They've done all this like coding to make it sound like a room. They didn't go in and create it from a physical space. They digitally made one. So, and they sound good, man. They really do. I do like the third party stuff, because the third party companies, that's all they're doing is making those plugins. Whereas like Apple, they're making Logic, the plugins, and everything else. And so they're kind of spreading their time around, you know, whereas a third party is, hey, this is what we do for a living. We're making these plugins. We're putting all our R&D into these plugins. And so they sound really good. But so does Logic too. Don't hear me wrong there.
Okay, so I'm going to start, and here I am doing time management for us. I'm going to start winding you back down. You get your things in, you get your tracks in, you get your mixer built.
Yep.
And then do you prefer to mix from Mixer View, or do you do it in your, I mean, these are the same sliders on this screen. These are the same sliders that I see in GarageBand.
Yeah.
The left and right sliders.
So the first thing I do when I start mixing is I've got it all color coded. Everything's kind of zero. I start panning things. It's pretty easy to pan guitars. So this particular session has like 30 guitar tracks. It's stupid.
Okay.
Wow.
Let me ask you a question, because I know Mr. Johns asked us about this. Your theory on panning in a nutshell, not a.
So here's
what do you
the
put
thing.
where
So
and why?
I'm looking at this name. This is electric guitar 1, mic 1, electric guitar 2, mic 2. So this is the same guitar. They just had 2 mics on the amp cabinet, right?
Right.
I just took those 2 and threw them to the left. And look, it's the same kind of content. It's not almost mirrored. So what they did is they double tracked the guitars. They're playing the same parts. They're just doubling them up. Okay. So
Okay.
that can pan straight left, right. I mean, all my guitars typically are pan left, right.
So that's your stereo, right?
Yeah. Unless there's like a lead part. I didn't go through all these tracks. If there's like a lead, I'll kind of keep it in the center. If the lead's playing on top of a vocal, I'll shift it off center a little bit so the vocal stays in the center. But for the most part,
do you use pan to help give like frequency instruments a little room to breathe around each other, kind of help pull them out?
yeah, absolutely. You
Can
know,
you
there's
explain
this
that to me a little?
well, there's this big hotshot mix engineer called Chris Lord Alge, and he said once in a video I was watching, he said, "You got 2 speakers, man. Use them. Like, use both speakers. Pan
Right.
stuff out." Because I think he's in a school of what you call LCR, which is left, center, right, and you only put things on the left, the center, right, and nowhere in between. You're just kind of popping everything out. Whereas,
So
Okay.
how do you help a bass player and a left hand on a keyboard? How do you keep those separate in a mix and not muddy up?
Kill the bass
hopefully,
player.
if it's a hopefully if it's a good piano sound and you pan them hard left or right, your left hand is actually in the left speaker, so it's not in the middle, and so your bass should have plenty of room in the middle.
So you keep your
So-
bass in the middle.
Oh yeah, all the time. I might every now and then maybe slightly off middle just to make a little room, but most of the time it's dead center. Everything in the center is a kick, snare, bass, vocal, maybe a lead guitar for like a cool, ballad or something. Everything else I'm trying to spread out. I mean, so I keep doing this to my face. So it's like I got 2 ears, right? And so when you listen to it in headphones, you hear all this like real estate. You can put stuff in this whole scope where you hear it in your head.
So do you do it with headphones on, not studio monitors mostly?
Yeah, I mix mainly on headphones, only because it's whenever my daughter was born, I was in the room right next to her, and so I thought, well, I probably better not play the speakers, and so now I got a pair of headphones over there, and that's kind of what I mix on. I got used to them, and so that's how I do it. Some people think I'm crazy, but hey, it works.
So in Logic, you find the mix you like, you get it the way you want it. I assume you're saving as you go.
Yep.
And then what's the output step?
So once let's say this is a dialed in mix, you literally, I'll show you where it is up here. It's called bounce. You bounce out your project. So if I were to hit, I'm just going to use my key command, Command B bounces, and then you're ready to go. You could literally pick what resolution you want it in, what sample rate. Don't go above 48 because most players won't play it. You could pick MP3 if you wanted to. You could pick the bit rate of your MP3. Goes all the way up to 320. Most of the time,
ask you there's a selfish question. Used to be when you imported into like iTunes, if you had CDs, and I realize we've moved past some of that, but it would ask you what, and I don't know the right term. Do you want it at 126? Do you want it at blah, blah, blah? And I was always like, no, I got to put it in there at the highest quality it will let me. Are you a subscriber to that? Or is there, most people won't notice if you put it at this? I mean, what's your recommendation on your output?
Well, if you're talking MP3, yes, I think there is an audible difference between 256 and like 96.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, it's getting a little skewed in between here. I would say 128, 256.
And you start hearing the hiss to it, or this.
Yeah, and you can hear these kind of washy,
Right.
I think pretty much the standard these days is 256. 320 is supposed to be CD quality, quote unquote.
But it takes more space.
It does take up more space. Yeah, the file size is bigger. Matter of fact, if I click on this, let's see here, it'll be a 95 megabyte file if I chose 320 MP3. If I come down here to 64, well, it didn't actually adjust. I thought it would, but this would be smaller. It wouldn't be quite as big.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so you pick how you want to bounce it out. Can you print straight to CD from here, or do you just print to a file, or?
Yeah, it'll just give you a WAV file, or if I go back.
I'm probably showing off my age. Who prints to CDs anymore, right?
Yeah, so it prints out. You could choose WAV file or AIF, CAF. What is that one? I can't remember what that one is. There's a particular type of program that wants that file.
So Stephen, if you were going to use this, do you know what your output settings are to go to SoundCloud?
No, man, I haven't even. This is all new to me.
Okay.
But I bet it's in the info. I bet you can look in your help.
Yeah,
files.
I'm definitely gonna take a look at that.
So these two formats right here, MP3 versus PCM, is post. What is it? Something code modulation, doesn't matter. This is raw audio. This is like high res raw audio, whereas MP3 is compressed no matter how you do it, whether you choose 320, 256, all that.
It's going to squish it, right?
Still has a compression to it. Because of that. M4A, I mean, that's kind of another type of MP3 kind of thing. It's an Apple
It's for
codec.
ringtones.
Yeah. Yeah.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
I do have a question. One of the things that I've experienced again on GarageBand, I wanted to see if maybe when you do upgrade to Logic, maybe that, I don't know if it fixes itself. But say I do bounce out a track, and then say, for example, I'm listening to it, and then I go from my track, and then let's say I jump on Spotify or iTunes, and then I just listen to an artist, and I could audibly hear that my track, even if I turn my volume all the way up, it's still at a lower volume coming out.
Mm-hmm.
When you do it with Logic, do you run into those types of things?
Yeah. Well, I usually output pretty hot anyway. So it's usually pegging up here. Matter of fact, I hit all the way to 0, which is what the guy commented, Mr. Johns. Why don't you go to 0? I do technically. But Spotify is like around here where it says -14. So even if you put yours out right down here, technically Spotify would turn it up to -14. So I don't know why yours was audibly quieter. Because that's what I was saying. They're going to adjust your mix to where they want it anyway, unless yours was super dynamic. And so that's when you start adding all these plugins, like on your master. I use these plugins to get maximum volume out of it. So I'm really narrowing the dynamic range so I can get the whole mix louder. And so that all comes with compression. All these different stages of compression. I'll put a compressor on the kick, and then I'm going to put a compressor on the drums, and then I'm slowly going to bring it all, the dynamic range down, so it's all louder in the end. So if you're not using compression, you should use some compression for sure.
And I haven't, because I wasn't, like I said, it's new to me, so I'm just trying to learn little things as I go along.
Yeah. So that's probably why yours sounds not quite as loud on Spotify, because you're probably like, let's listen to this kick real quick. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, so see how much range it's got? It could come all the way up to here if I wanted it to, So that's probably that kind of the area you're getting into. Squish it down a little bit, man. It's not going to hurt to compress it.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean.
And I think it's one of those things that Steve and I had this conversation the other day. It's all the journey.
Yeah.
What sounds awesome to me today might not sound awesome to me 6 months from now.
Right.
But you just got to be true to who you are, where you are now.
Right. And you will change. You'll change with the times too. I mean.
And if you have good friends, they'll tell you, what if we?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you a couple of kind of wrap up questions.
Yeah.
If I am not that experienced, if I am somewhat nervous about all the things that, plugins and compression and EQ and reverb and convolution, is your recommendation, oh, well, let's just jump in and figure it out? Or is there places, like Linda, does she do how to use Logic, or is there YouTube that you've done to learn things? Is there kind of to take some of the curve out here?
Yeah, YouTube University, man. If I'd have had that when I started off, I've been a lot further along.
But I don't think Logic's something to be scared of necessarily. That's kind of where I'm trying to go.
No, you're not going to screw it up either. When I'm learning something, I don't save, because I could always go back to where I started if I hadn't screwed it up, or I make those different little what it tells you, revisions or whatever.
_A_B.
Yeah, that way I can go back if I want to get experimental. Let me just try something crazy. Oh, okay, then it worked. I'm going to go back to the revision and start over. Matter of fact, there's this paid subscription thing I do. It's actually metal. I never mixed metal my entire life, but I thought one day, I was like, if I could mix metal, those guys make just this brutal, like aggressive music sound audible. If I could do that, I could probably do anything. And so for $20 a month, I pay for these tracks from these like name brand metal guys and mixers. I get to mix it, and at the end of the month, the guy that mixed it on the record shows you how he did it. I mean, and so you get these really, really good tracks. I mean, they sound incredible. And then a guy at the end of the month will show you how he did on the record. And man, that's
You
how
can compare and contrast what you've done.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I learned a bunch from that. And what's $20 a month? I mean, it's nothing. And it's metal. I mean, it's something that's completely new to me.
I don't know that sometimes that's not smart anyway. So you don't have preconceived notions about what it's
Yeah.
supposed to sound like.
Right. Oh yeah. Damn. I mean, they've kind of blown my mind away. Just how they mix, and yeah, I mean, the way they could actually get all this energy and everything and it still be audible was just pretty impressive. So
Cool.
Yeah.
Rick, we got any questions, bud?
Yeah, we do. This is going to kind of change gears just a little bit. Mr. Johns asked, he says, I have my students doing recording projects. They play along with an MP3 with music and a click, and he wants them to listen and play along while they record. Can you recommend a free Mac program for this?
I mean, GarageBand will do that. As far as, playing to a click and all that, you could load the MP3 into. Can you load the MP3s into GarageBand?
You can.
Yeah. If I'm understanding right, load that MP3 into GarageBand, turn on the click, and start recording along with it, or whatever. Yeah.
If I'm learning a cover, that's what I do. I throw the MP3 in there and I compare what I play against what the actual.
Make
track
sure your
does.
tempo is kind of set right, because here's your tempo right here. And so that's gonna click. Here's the metronome in Logic. It'll click along to that tempo. So you have to make sure you know what tempo that song you're playing.
Right, that's exactly like GarageBand.
Right. Yeah. So make sure that's all set right, and so that way it starts clicking along. Matter of fact, it's important because there's a grid. If you zoom into this grid, you see all these little ticks, and you could see that this song is actually off the grid. So I'd have to help move this whole song to put it on the grid. And so
Well,
now
the other thing that I'll say there's a website that'll give you the BPM of most songs,
Yeah.
the beats per minute, and it is amazing. I've played with a click track now since about 2007. If you're if you get excited when you record, it's amazing how bad you are to the metronome unless you're just really paying attention. So
Yeah.
I would really recommend the metronome feature. But yeah, GarageBand will do exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, if I understand his question correctly, I think that's what he wants.
Well, and I even found out the other day, if you just load in the audio file.
Mhm.
Now this is I don't know if GarageBand does it, but at least Logic, it can actually analyze the tempo and then move the project so that it starts on the downbeat and that you already have the click program. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah,
That's cool.
BPM counter, I think is what it's called, something like that.
Yeah, it just adapts the project tempo
Right.
to that audio file.
I will tell you one thing that I learned this week and got laughed at for it, but just because right next to the metronome, it says 1, 2, 3, 4 up there in your interface, that's a count in for the
Right.
beginning of it. It'll say 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, and you could
so you
customize
know
it
where to start.
Mhm.
But if you got pickups, you're still going to have to be silent for the first couple of beats of the next measure till you get to the pickup, because it cut all the pickups off.
Yeah.
So my project starts on 1 like it's supposed to. So
Yeah.
any other questions, Rick? I'm looking at my time here.
Nope, that's all the questions we had at this point.
Awesome. Do any of you guys, Kyler or Steven or my friend Rick, do y'all have questions that we could throw out there real quick?
Well, I probably have 30 minutes more of questions, but I think that just means we need Cody on another time if he's willing to do it.
I'm going to stop this.
But what I was going to ask, Cody, is do you offer a service if people are, have a mix and they want it mastered to put it online? I mean, I think most people now put it online, but I guess a CD would suffice as well. Do you offer that service? Can people contact you to do that?
To do actually mastering or the mixing of it?
I would say either or.
Either or. Yeah, I've done it in the past for sure. Yeah, I had a request last week to mix a track. Yeah, for sure.
Is that something you're interested in doing? That's really kind of where.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm always game for it. I don't have it as like an actual business per se, but man, I'm always game
Hey,
for it.
speaking of that,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna plug that real quick.
Oh, yeah, that's a good looking hat you got there. I
Is
like
that?
that. Yeah, that's
WG
nice.
Inspections. It's probably, and I don't mean this in a flippant way. I don't want to offend anybody, but if we're looking, we're probably going to have an active housing market coming up pretty quick. So that's one thing you are doing now, just so people know.
Right.
You doing home inspections. How can they find you?
Website, Facebook, Google.
WG Inspections.
That's it.
Okay. And are you still doing any of the home fabrication stuff, or are you just concentrating on the inspections right now?
Mainly inspections, yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, I just want to throw that out there. Great guy. I can vouch for him. Steven, nothing?
No, just trying to take,
You're
take
processing that.
yeah, take my notes and excited about the conversation because there's just like an endless pool of things to learn when it comes to music.
And that's really what we want to encourage. Don't stop. You got to keep learning. You can't figure out. And Cody, would you admit this, that even when you think you got a pretty good grasp of the live mix world and recording world, but there's always something new coming out. There's always something new to learn, or, someone to learn from.
And you're never going to be as good as you want to be, I mean, I still walk away from some mixes. I'm like, wow, that was really terrible. I mean, that was absolutely terrible. And then come and say, man, that's the best it's ever sounded. I'm like, we got two different ears, man. I don't know what you were hearing.
All right. I'm putting you on the spot here, but that's okay. And you can answer honestly. I want you to.
Yeah.
If people have questions for you, is there a way they can get a hold of you? You want to go through us, or?
Yeah, message me. I mean, I'm on Facebook, Instagram. I guess if you Google my business, you get my phone number. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you are out there on Facebook and you're on Instagram, Cody Gaines.
That's right.
Okay, cool. Well, I got a couple of house cleaning things I'm going to do. So I'm telling you, thanks, Cody. I really appreciate you being here. I'm kind of with Kyler. We try to keep these things around an hour. We're
Sure.
pretty well over that at this point, but that's my fault for all the questions at the beginning. If you have any interest in coming back, we'd love to have you back.
Cool.
But we'll, maybe if people have specific questions and they ask us as they watch this moving forward. I hope that we presented this in a way that makes you go, I need to check that out. That's really kind of our goal, is to be not intimidating, but informative.
Sure.
And so thank you, sir. I'm going to move into my quick announcements for Intune Music. Thanks again. And I look forward to maybe keeping this conversation going. So everybody else, I need to tell you that we haven't pushed it as hard. I wanted to make sure that we gave all our attention to Cody today, but we are still doing our Your Turn challenge for the music. We did our videos, we did our recordings, and then we opened it up last Friday for you guys to do your projects. I hope that you're taking advantage of that. We'd love to hear what you got. Those are due when, Rick? Thursday, Friday?
They are due by Friday.
By Friday. So we have an upload link. It's intunemusic.com/your turn. INTUNEMUSIC/your turn. You load those up there, and we are going to screen them because we do have some standards we want to keep. We're not looking for, vulgarity, indecency, all that stuff that people get offended because you're ruining this is our contest. We got our standards. So we try to keep it where I can show my grandkids and not be embarrassed. But we'd love for you to participate, and then we'll open that up for a vote. We got a prize for you. Either a mic that we have or a $100 store gift certificate toward a piece of recording equipment you want. So take advantage of it. Go open up some Logic. Get us a project in here by Friday. That'd be awesome. What else do I need to tell everybody about? What else are we doing? Oh, you need to check out our Instagram. If you haven't been in a while, we're doing some fresh new things there. We got a fun thing doing right now called the 15-second music show. Go check out some of those people showing off their music. We're excited about it. We think it's awesome. Last thing I'll tell you is, we still got restrictions going on. Please be smart. Please be safe. Wash your hands. Don't touch your face. If you come to our store, please wear a mask. We'll all be wearing them. Again, not being afraid of things. We just want this over with. We just want to move on and figure out what normal means and enjoy our musical journeys again without having to worry about who's breathing, who's hacking, and who's threatening my health. So be smart. Do the right things. We care about you. We're here right now, 5 people in the store at a time. We're open 10 to 6 Monday through Friday, and then 10 to 5 on Saturdays. Anything I forgot, guys?
I think that's it.
Awesome. Okay. Well, next Tuesday, or actually, I'm probably going to talk to you Friday about the Your Turn thing. And then next Tuesday, I hope that if she's listening, I think that we're going to talk to Karen Crutchfield again. She has been helping us with learning about the oboe. So if anybody's listening that goes, the what? Tune in Tuesday. It's the oboe. It's an awesome instrument. It's hard to teach as a beginner sometimes, and she's going to help us make that easier. Absolutely enjoy talking to her. She's a lot of fun too. So everybody be safe. We love you. We care about you. And we will see you on Friday. I don't know which iteration of all of us it will be, but we'll see you then. God bless.